Hi, John.
Hey, Suzanne.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you.
I wanted to share something that kind of is occurring for me. There may be a question in there. Once in a while, a question seems to pop up regarding it, but I don't, at other times, I don't feel like there's a question. Um, so I would characterize what I've been feeling over the last week or so as giving up, and not in a negative way per se, but just like there's nothing, like a recognition that there's absolutely nothing this me can do to awaken. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
And somehow that's sinking in at a level that hadn't previously. And one of the things that I think caused that to happen is I recognized that part of what I was still holding on to as a person was maybe is uh, a desire to be a good person, and not in a like overwhelmingly strong way, but just kind of a sense that the way I wanted to be in the world, I basically want to do the right thing. And that actually uh, was a decision I made actually as a child, believe it or not, because of some of the trauma I went through as a child. I decided that, I was going to do my best to do what I can to be a good person, and it hasn't necessarily caused me to like be over self-critical or you know I'm sure I am self-critical at times, but it was more of a recognized as a journey, and that it's something that I can continue to evolve toward. So in some ways healthy, um, but it's still it's still wanting to be something I'm not. There's still a set of expectations in there that I'm moving towards something. And what I've recognized, as noble as that is, and by the way, just to, I would say I'm moderately successful. It's not like I've been, this ideal person, but what I recognize is that it, in and of itself, is a resistance to what's here now.
totally. Yeah. That's a beautiful whole synopsis you just gave. So that
Yeah.
was the conditioning here as well.
Mhm.
Like this character was so neglected that the only value it could see is to be there for others and like be a good person that way to get value, you know?
Yeah.
That was really ingrained here. And I really had to see that that's a total idea. It's a complete construct. And that doesn't mean that I'm a better person. Not at all, actually. It caused me more suffering and it actually caused resentment and maybe hatred toward others sometimes, understandably. Like that's a
Mhm.
normal thing that would come up in
Yeah.
that dynamic. Um, for you, it's probably mellowed out, but for me, it was like still kind of a strong conditioning here.
Mhm.
And that really went to zero. And it was
Mhm.
devastating because I think it was the main way the person functioned here
Mhm.
to be a good person, to be spiritual, to be of service, to make a difference. I thought
Yeah.
that was the purpose of this life.
Right. Right. Right.
And I think that's been one of the most devastating things here.
Mhm.
And last week I mentioned that something was changing in the way I was speaking.
Hmm.
Something internally felt like the energy was diminishing. And I think it was the end of that.
Mm.
There was a subtle part here that still felt like um, I was helping in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the last bit of that went.
Yeah.
But I can also say that this body is still conditioned the way it's conditioned, and it still acts the same,
Mm-hmm.
similar,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's not driven by this subtle fulfillment it was getting from it. But in that subtle fulfillment was always the complexity of then I need to be, it should be a fair exchange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think within that, like, there's still some expectation
Mm-hmm.
that I'm rewarded for what I'm doing because I'm being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to
Yeah.
completely,
I think for me, I mean, there's probably some of that as well. Um, but for me, it's actually probably more driven by a fear that I'm going to hurt someone the way I was hurt, or, just generalizing that hurt a little bit. And that fear of doing that is very strong. Like, so in the past week, as I recognize some of this, what comes up is, but if I let go, I might hurt someone. That's what's coming up. And of course, I remember, at that, as that arises, that there never was a me operating anyway. So the avoidance of hurting someone isn't going to be influenced by, I mean, it's going to be what it is. It's like just naturally going to arise as kind of the way things are. That the control that I thought I had wasn't really mattering.
mm,
That's the intellectual right now, and it's kind of working its way down
yeah. But you're
because
totally right.
the fear is what's pushing it in the other direction,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
But I really believe that, like, there's so many parts of me that have dropped away that it's often kind of like, and it's been a very slow, gradual thing in my life. Like, it's not like, when I say slow and gradual, I'm talking decades, and I've recognized that at times its slowness has caused me to wonder whether it's real. But now it's gotten to a point where I see it as real. There's so much that has dropped away, but there was still a holding on, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I think this has a lot to do with it. And so I'm giving up.
Mm,
At least that's the intention.
yeah, yeah,
We'll see if intention matters. I don't know, you know.
yeah. I think in a subtle way, it subconsciously somehow gets in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fear that I hear that actually often. Like if I'm not a good person, yeah, what if I hurt another?
Mm.
And that is what the mind goes to. It thinks that it will lose control and it will do whatever it wants.
Right.
It doesn't.
No.
So I've noticed like also that same energy that's there to be a good person is the same energy there to be a bad person.
Hmm.
So when it goes, there is no energy to harm another.
Mm.
It just isn't there.
Mm.
I'm not saying that uh anger and stuff can't arise as a thought and a feeling, but there's no energy to really like, you don't see another anymore. There's just anger and these thoughts toward another body, but underneath it, you really do feel like there is no one there.
Mm, mm, mm. I guess the thing that's occurring to me is that just the idea that both sides drop away is I think it's good to hear, because I think what's happening with me is it's kind of like both sides are kind of exerting themselves a little bit right now in this period. Like I find myself losing my patience more often, recently, and then there are times where, I recognize that there isn't anything to be done. You know what I mean? So
Losing your patience with other people.
yeah, in silly ways, nothing, just ways that had dropped away for me. Like, you know, I don't know, getting irritated with drivers. I mean, there was a period where, that was pretty common for me. I would just like, why can't people drive as good as me? And of course, but then that was one of those things that just fell away. It's like it didn't matter. But now I found myself in the last few days, it's like having that pop up again.
Yeah, yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. Like different things might just come up when that sort of need to be a certain way relaxes a bit more. And
Hmm.
then yeah, just if there's a little remnants of stuff, it might
Hmm.
be free to act out.
Yeah. And that's exactly how I feel. Like I've given it freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Like if some of it has dropped away, but there's still, as you're saying, a remnant of impatience that's there that I felt like I had managed, you know.
Yeah.
And now that I'm kind of giving up in some way, it's just kind of coming up on its own and doing what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. You beautifully described what happens here. Anything that was subtly unconsciously repressed, it just is free to be as it is, act out and be free.
Mm-hmm.
Like the anger here that I felt for my parents,
Mm-hmm.
that I just didn't want to be a so-called bad person to
Mm-hmm.
think of my parents in that way.
Right.
There's just this understandable anger that's there that was never allowed to just be. And now it's coming up and it's uncomfortable, but it needs to just be free.
Yeah. 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 Even in the midst of it, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Like, that it's okay. Like it is what it is. I mean, I don't want to sound cliche, but it is what it is. And this me thinking it can manage life so that it's not there is nonsense. And so so I think that's, there's a little bit of just things coming out to express themselves.
Yep.
That felt good to put that out there. I haven't shared that with anybody, so I appreciate you listening.
Yeah. That's nice. You said it beautifully.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks so much,
All
John.
right. Thank you.